Hello, I'm Mrs. Evelyn. Welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoyed today's story. They say money changes people. Linda never believed that, not until the day she found the lottery ticket hidden in her husband's wallet. Ethan was a mason, 46 years old, calloused hands, sun-worn face. He built walls for a living, came home tired every night, kissed Linda on the forehead, and sat down to whatever simple meal she'd made. They weren't rich. They never had been. But they were happy. At least that's what Linda thought. She was 42, a homemaker who spent her days cleaning, cooking, and keeping their small house in order. She didn't mind it. Ethan worked hard and she took care of him. That was the deal. That was love, as far as she understood it. They lived next door to Mrs. Harris, an older woman with kind eyes, and a daughter named Olivia. Olivia was in law school, sharp, determined, always with her nose in a book. Linda admired her. Sometimes she'd bring Olivia homemade cookies, tell her she was proud of her, even though she wasn't her mother. Olivia would smile and say, "Thank you, Mrs. Linda. You're too good to us." Everything was normal. Everything was fine. Until it wasn't. It started small. Ethan began acting strange. He'd come home later than usual, smelling like cologne instead of cement dust. He'd check his phone constantly, smile at the screen, then hide it when Linda walked into the room. At first, she thought maybe he was planning a surprise for her birthday. Maybe he'd finally saved enough to buy her that necklace she'd looked at in the store window months ago. But her birthday came and went. No necklace, no surprise. Just a quick, happy birthday and a grocery store cake. Linda didn't say anything. She told herself she was being paranoid. Marriage had rough patches. Everyone said so. Then one evening, Ethan sat her down at the kitchen table. His face was serious. Too serious. "Linda," he said, "I think we need to talk." Her heart dropped. She knew that tone. She'd heard it in movies, in stories her friends told. It was the tone that came before something bad. "What's wrong?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He didn't look at her. He stared at his hands instead, the same hands that had held hers on their wedding day 20 years ago. "I don't think this is working anymore," he said. The words hit her like a slap. "What do you mean?" she whispered. "Us. This marriage. I don't feel it anymore." Linda sat there frozen. She wanted to scream, to cry, to ask him why. But nothing came out. Her throat was tight, her chest heavy. "I want a divorce," Ethan said. Simple, cold, final. She didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what had just happened. 20 years, 2 decades of her life, and he was throwing it away like it meant nothing. The next morning, Ethan moved into the guest room. He barely spoke to her. He avoided eye contact, ate his meals quickly, and left the house as early as possible. It was like living with a ghost. Linda tried to hold herself together, but it was hard. She cried in the shower. She cried while folding laundry. She cried at night when she was sure he couldn't hear. Mrs. Harris noticed. She always did. "Linda, honey, are you okay?" she asked one afternoon, finding Linda sitting on her porch with red eyes. Linda wanted to lie, to say everything was fine, but she couldn't. The words came tumbling out. Ethan, the divorce, the sudden coldness. Mrs. Harris listened, her face full of concern. "That doesn't sound right," Mrs. Harris said quietly. "Men don't just change like that without a reason." Linda didn't know what to say. Maybe he'd met someone else. Maybe he was tired of her. Maybe she wasn't enough. But Mrs. Harris wasn't convinced. She had a feeling. The kind older women get when something's not adding up. A few days later, Olivia came home from school, and saw Ethan at the corner store. He was laughing, talking loudly on his phone, buying expensive cigars and a bottle of champagne. Olivia thought it was strange. The man was about to divorce his wife, and he looked like he was celebrating. She mentioned it to her mother that night. Mrs. Harris frowned. Champagne? Cigars? That man's a Mason. He doesn't have that kind of money. Olivia tilted her head, thinking, unless he does now. Mrs. Harris's eyes widened. I think we need to pay attention, Olivia said, and they did. Over the next few days they watched. They noticed Ethan's new watch, his new shoes, the way he checked his phone and grinned like a man with a secret. Mrs. Harris pieced it together first. He won something, she said to Olivia one evening. Lottery, maybe? Or some kind of prize, and he doesn't want Linda to know. Olivia's jaw tightened. If that's true, and he files for divorce before telling her. He keeps it all, Mrs. Harris finished. They looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. This man was about to rob his wife of everything, and they couldn't let that happen. Olivia didn't waste time. The next day, she knocked on Linda's door. Linda opened it, surprised. Olivia, is everything okay? No, Olivia said firmly. It's not. We need to talk. Linda sat across from Olivia at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she wasn't drinking. Olivia's face was serious, her law books spread out in front of her like weapons. Mrs. Linda, Olivia began, her voice steady but urgent. I need you to listen carefully. I think Ethan is hiding something from you, something big. Linda's stomach twisted. What do you mean? My mom and I have been watching him. He's been spending money. A lot of it. New clothes, expensive liquor, cigars. He doesn't act like a man going through a divorce. He acts like a man who just came into money. Linda stared at her, confused. But we don't have money. We barely have savings. Exactly, Olivia said. So where's it coming from? Linda didn't have an answer. Olivia leaned forward. I think he won something. The lottery, maybe. And I think he's hiding it from you so he can divorce you and keep it all. The words hung in the air like smoke. Linda felt her chest tighten. She wanted to say Ethan would never do that. But the truth was, she didn't know anymore. The man she'd been married to for 20 years had become a stranger. What do I do? Linda whispered. Olivia's eyes were sharp, determined. You fight back, but you have to be smart about it. If he's hiding money, we need proof, and we need to act fast, before he files the divorce papers. Linda nodded slowly, her hands trembling. Over the next few days, Olivia became Linda's shadow. She explained the law, told her what to look for, how to protect herself. Linda had never thought of herself as strong, but Olivia made her feel like maybe she could be. Check his wallet, Olivia instructed. Look for receipts, bank statements, anything unusual. If he won the lottery, there's a ticket somewhere. Linda waited until Ethan was in the shower. Her heart pounded as she went into the guest room and picked up his wallet from the dresser. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside, tucked behind his driver's license, was a folded piece of paper. She pulled it out carefully. It was a lottery ticket. And written at the top, in red ink, were the words, Winner, 8,750. Linda's legs almost gave out. She grabbed the edge of the dresser to steady herself. $8 million. He'd won $8 million and said nothing. She heard the shower turn off. Panic shot through her. Quickly, she folded the ticket, slipped it back into his wallet exactly where she'd found it, and left the room. That night, she told Olivia. Olivia's face went hard. That bastard! Mrs. Harris, sitting beside her daughter, shook her head in disgust. 20 years of marriage, and he was going to throw her away like trash. Not if we stop him, Olivia said. She turned to Linda. We need to move fast. I'm calling a lawyer I know. Someone good. Someone who won't let him get away with this. Linda nodded, tears streaming down her face. I can't believe he would do this to me. Mrs. Harris reached over and squeezed her hand. Believe it, honey. But don't let it break you. You're going to come out of this stronger than he ever was. The lawyer Olivia found was a woman named Catherine Brennan. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, and had a reputation for destroying liars in court. She met with Linda the next day. Here's what we're going to do, Catherine said, laying out a plan. You're going to take that ticket, not steal it. Take what's legally yours. You're still married. That ticket was purchased during the marriage. In this state, that makes it marital property. Linda's eyes widened. But he'll know I took it. Good, Catherine said coldly. Let him know. By the time he figures it out, it'll be too late. Olivia nodded in agreement. You need to get to the lottery office before he does. Cash it in, put it in an account he can't touch, and then we go to court. Linda felt like she was in a dream, a nightmare. She'd never done anything like this in her life. She was a homemaker. She baked cookies and folded laundry. She wasn't the kind of person who stole lottery tickets and fought in court. But she also wasn't the kind of person who deserved to be thrown away. That night, Linda waited until Ethan was asleep. She crept into the guest room, her heart hammering in her chest. She opened his wallet again, pulled out the ticket, and slipped it into her purse. She didn't sleep. She sat in the living room until dawn, clutching her purse like it was the only thing keeping her alive. The next morning, Olivia drove her to the lottery office. Linda's hands shook as she handed over the ticket. The clerk checked it, smiled, and said, Congratulations, ma'am. You're a winner. Linda wanted to laugh, or cry, or scream. Instead, she just nodded. They set up a secure account in her name only. Catherine made sure every legal step was followed perfectly. By the time Linda walked out of that building, the money was hers. When she got home, Ethan was sitting at the kitchen table, his face pale. Where is it? He asked, his voice shaking. Linda didn't answer. She just looked at him, this man she'd loved for 20 years, and felt nothing but disappointment. Where's the ticket, Linda? I don't know what you're talking about, she said calmly. His eyes went wild. Don't lie to me. I know you took it. She set her purse down on the counter and turned to face him fully. You wanted a divorce, Ethan. So let's get divorced. He stood up, panic all over his face. Linda, wait. We need to talk about this. Now you want to talk? She said quietly. Now that your plan fell apart? He opened his mouth, then closed it. He had nothing to say. No excuse good enough. I'll see you in court, Linda said, and she walked out of the room. The divorce proceedings began 2 weeks later. Ethan showed up to the courthouse looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were bloodshot, his shirt wrinkled. He kept glancing at Linda like he was trying to figure out what she knew. Linda sat beside Catherine, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. She looked calm, composed, but inside her heart was racing. Ethan's lawyer was a younger man, inexperienced, clearly unprepared for what was about to happen. He shuffled through papers nervously while Catherine sat there like a predator, waiting to strike. The judge, an older woman with grey hair and a no-nonsense expression, looked over the case file. This is a dissolution of marriage. 20 years. No children. No significant assets listed. She glanced up. Is that correct? Ethan's lawyer started to speak, but Ethan cut him off. "Actually, Your Honor," Ethan said, standing up abruptly, "there is something." Linda's stomach dropped. She knew what was coming. Ethan smiled, the kind of smile a man wears when he thinks he's won. "I recently came into some money. A lottery winning. $8 million. The judge raised an eyebrow. "And when did this occur?" "About a month ago," Ethan said, "before the divorce was filed." Catherine didn't move. She just watched him, letting him dig his own grave. The judge looked at Linda. "Were you aware of this, Mrs. Carson?" Linda nodded slowly. "Yes, Your Honor. I was." Ethan's face twisted in confusion. "What?" Catherine stood, her voice clear and confident. "Your Honor, my client became aware of the lottery winning after Mr. Carson attempted to hide it from her. The ticket was purchased during the marriage, making it marital property under state law. Mrs. Carson, exercising her legal right, claimed the prize and secured it in her own account." The courtroom went silent. Ethan's face turned red. "She stole it. She went through my wallet and stole my ticket." "It wasn't your ticket," Catherine said coldly. "It was purchased with marital funds during the marriage. That makes it joint property. My client simply claimed what was legally hers." The judge looked at Ethan, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Carson, did you inform your wife about this lottery winning when it occurred?" Ethan stammered. I was going to. Did you or did you not inform her?" "No," he admitted quietly. "And you filed for divorce shortly after?" He said nothing. The judge leaned back in her chair. "Mr. Carson, it appears you attempted to conceal a significant marital asset in order to exclude your wife from it. That is not only unethical, it's illegal." She turned to Catherine. "The lottery winnings will be considered marital property and subject to equitable distribution." Ethan's lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. Ethan stood up, his voice rising. "This is insane! She stole from me. She went behind my back?" "You went behind hers first," the judge said sharply. "Sit down, Mr. Carson." He sat, his hands shaking. Linda felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. Not happiness, not joy, but relief. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't wrong. The law was on her side. Catherine presented the evidence, the dates, the timeline, the proof that Ethan had hidden the ticket and planned the divorce to keep the money. It was all there, clear as day. When it was over, the judge made her ruling. The marriage would be dissolved. The lottery winnings would be split evenly. $4 million each. Ethan looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Linda walked out of that courtroom with her head high. Olivia and Mrs. Harris were waiting outside, and they hugged her like she'd just won a war. "You did it," Olivia said, tears in her eyes. "You stood up for yourself." Linda nodded, but she didn't feel victorious. She felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that the man she'd loved had turned into someone she didn't recognize. But she also felt something else. Strength. For the first time in her life, she'd fought for herself. And she'd won. Over the next few weeks, Linda made decisions that surprised everyone, including herself. She could have kept all the money. Legally, she probably could have fought for it. But she didn't. She took her half and let Ethan have his, not because she forgave him, but because she didn't want to become the kind of person who held on to bitterness forever. "You're too kind," Mrs. Harris said one evening as they sat on the porch. Linda shook her head. "I'm not kind. I just want to move on." And she did. The first thing she did was help Olivia. The girl had saved her life, and Linda wasn't going to forget that. She paid off Olivia's student loans in full and set up a fund to cover the rest of her law school expenses. Olivia cried when Linda told her. "I can't accept this," she said. "You can, and you will." Linda replied firmly. "You helped me when I had nothing. Now I'm helping you." Olivia hugged her tight, and Linda felt something warm bloom in her chest. Purpose. She had purpose now. She also gave money to Mrs. Harris to help with her medical bills and home repairs. The older woman protested, but Linda insisted. "You've been a better friend to me than anyone," Linda said. "Let me do this." Mrs. Harris finally agreed, tears streaming down her face. With the rest of her money, Linda did something she'd always dreamed of. She opened a small artisan shop downtown. Handmade crafts, pottery, quilts, things she'd been making for years but never thought were good enough to sell. The shop was small, cozy, painted in soft colors. She called it Linda's Corner. It opened on a Saturday morning, and half the neighborhood showed up. People loved it. They loved her work, her kindness, the way she remembered everyone's names. Within months, the shop was thriving. She hired 2 employees, expanded the inventory, started selling online. She discovered she had a talent for business, something she'd never known about herself. Linda wasn't just surviving. She was flourishing. Ethan, on the other hand, went a different direction. With his $4 million, he did exactly what Linda thought he would. He bought a new truck, a big one with leather seats and chrome rims. He moved into a condo downtown, the kind with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city. He threw parties, bought rounds at bars, walked around like he owned the world. People noticed. They always do when someone suddenly has money. At first, Ethan loved the attention. Women flirted with him. Men wanted to be his friend. He felt young again, powerful, like he'd finally escaped the boring life he'd been living. But money doesn't buy loyalty. It buys company, and company disappears the moment the money does. Ethan didn't think about that. He didn't think about much at all. He just spent. He took trips to Vegas, lost thousands at the tables. He bought a boat he used twice. He invested in a friend's business idea that turned out to be a scam. $50,000 gone just like that. He didn't budget. He didn't save. He just lived like the money would last forever. It didn't. Within a year, the $4 million was down to $2 million. Within another year, it was less than $500,000. The condo was too expensive to keep. The truck payments piled up. The friends stopped calling. Ethan started to panic. He tried to work again, went back to masonry. But his hands weren't as steady as they used to be. His back ached. He'd gotten soft. The jobs were harder to find. People didn't trust him the way they used to. Word had gotten around about the divorce, about how he'd tried to cheat his wife. In a small community, that kind of thing sticks. By the time 2 years had passed, Ethan was broke. Not just low on funds, actually broke. He sold the truck, moved into a cheap apartment on the edge of town, and worked whatever jobs he could find. He thought about Linda sometimes, wondered if she'd take him back, wondered if he could apologize, explain that he'd made a mistake. But pride kept him from calling, and shame kept him from showing up at her door. One evening he drove past her shop, Linda's Corner. It was glowing with warm light, people inside laughing and browsing. Through the window he saw her. She was helping a customer, smiling, looking healthier and happier than he'd ever seen her. She'd cut her hair shorter. She wore nicer clothes. She looked confident, alive. Ethan sat in his old beat-up car and realized something that hit him like a punch to the chest. She didn't need him. She never had. He was the one who'd needed her. Her steadiness, her kindness, her loyalty. And he'd thrown it all away for money that was already gone. He drove home that night and sat alone in his empty apartment, staring at the walls. No friends, no family, no wife. Just silence. Meanwhile, Linda's life kept growing. The shop expanded into the space next door. She hired Olivia part-time to help with contracts and legal paperwork. Olivia had graduated law school and passed the bar, and she credited Linda for making it possible. "I wouldn't be here without you," Olivia said one day, organizing files in the back office. Linda smiled. "We helped each other. That's what people are supposed to do." Mrs. Harris spent her afternoons at the shop, knitting in the corner, greeting customers like old friends. Her health had improved. The stress was gone. She was happy. Linda had become something she never expected. A businesswoman, a mentor, a pillar of her community. People respected her. Not because she had money, but because of how she used it. She donated to local schools, sponsored scholarships, helped families in need. She didn't do it for recognition. She did it because it felt right. One afternoon, a man came into the shop. He was tall, kind-faced, a teacher at the local high school. His name was David. He bought a quilt for his mother and struck up a conversation with Linda about the craftsmanship. They talked for an hour. He came back the next week, and the week after that. Linda didn't rush into anything. She'd learned her lesson about trust. But David was patient. He didn't push. He just showed up, steady and genuine. Months later, they went on their first date. Dinner at a quiet restaurant. Nothing fancy. They talked about books, about life, about second chances. Linda smiled more that night than she had in years. She didn't know where it would go, and she didn't need to. She was happy just being herself, building a life she was proud of. One evening, as she locked up the shop, she stood outside for a moment and looked at the sign above the door. Linda's Corner. It wasn't much, just a small shop in a small town. But it was hers. She'd built it from nothing, with her own hands and her own heart. She thought about Ethan sometimes, not with anger, but with something closer to pity. He'd had everything, a wife who loved him, a simple life, a chance at real happiness, and he'd gambled it all for money he didn't know how to keep. Linda had learned something he never would. Money doesn't make you rich. Integrity does. Kindness does. Knowing who you are and what you stand for. That's wealth. She walked home that night under the streetlights, her heart full, her mind at peace. Somewhere across town, Ethan sat alone in his apartment, staring at an old photo of their wedding day. He looked young in the picture, hopeful, happy. He barely recognized himself. Linda never looked back. She didn't need to. Her life was ahead of her now, not behind. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe so you won't miss the next one. Thank you for listening. See you soon.